Ever been invited to a family celebration where you're asked to tone yourself down, like your very presence might ruin the mood? My mum texted me the night before my sister's promotion ceremony and said, "Don't wear your uniform, honey. We don't want to confuse the guests." Not, "You're coming, right?" Not, "We're so proud." Just a reminder to shrink myself again for the sake of their narrative. I'm Leona Hayes. I'm 43. I've led black ops across 3 continents. I've written strategy papers classified above top secret. And I've commanded soldiers who would follow me through fire. But in my family, I'm the one who couldn't handle West Point. Yeah, that's where this revenge story begins. I read her text 3 times. Thought maybe I was misreading it, that somehow my mother's words weren't as blunt, as cold as they seemed. But they were. She didn't want me to wear my uniform, not because it was out of place, not because it would draw attention away from Madison, my younger sister, but because, in her words, too many uniforms might confuse the guests. I was one uniform too many. I set the phone down and stared at the open suitcase on my bed. Inside, folded with perfect creases, was my dress uniform, rank pins polished, ribbons earned, nameplate straight. I hadn't worn it in over a year, but it was ready. I was ready. Or at least, I thought I was. But I left it in the suitcase. Instead, I packed the beige slacks and soft blouse she might approve of, neutral colours, nothing official, just a fading outline of someone who used to matter. You'd think after all these years it wouldn't sting anymore, you'd think I'd be used to it, but every time I come home, if you can even call it that, I feel like a ghost. No framed pictures of me on the mantle, no mention of my deployments, no Leona's back signs at the airport, even after 9 months overseas. I once landed after a 14-hour flight, boots still caked in Syrian sand, and the only thing waiting for me was a voicemail from Dad. "Thought you were coming next week. Sorry, kiddo." That was it. Madison? Oh, she gets banners, she gets shrimp platters and Instagram carousels with #ProudArmyFamily. She's a logistics officer posted stateside. Solid service, I'll give her that. But in our house, she's the real soldier. Me? I was always too quiet, too sharp, too other. They never said it outright, never called me a failure to my face. But silence can cut deeper than insults ever will. I've spent 20 years wearing that silence like a second skin. They used my name, though. When Dad needed surgery fast-tracked through the VA, they called me. When Madison needed a reference for transfer, they asked me to pull strings, quietly, and I did. No complaints, no credit needed, because despite everything, I still wanted to be included, just seen. So yeah, I packed the plain clothes. I told myself, it's her day, not mine. And I drove 3 hours to the venue, rehearsing small talk and polite nods, pretending, as always, that being invisible didn't ache the way it used to. But in the back seat of my car, the uniform stayed, crisp, waiting. I didn't know yet why I brought it. Maybe habit, maybe hope. Or maybe a part of me still believed there would be a moment, just one, where someone would say, "Leona, you matter too." Spoiler, they didn't. When I arrived at the event hall, no one greeted me. My dad looked up from the name cards, nodded like I was someone's co-worker showing up late. My mum? She just pointed at a table near the back. "That one's yours. Unassigned family guests." Unassigned. Not welcome home, not glad you came, just unassigned. I sat down and looked around. Everyone else had shiny place cards with names and affiliations. Mine was blank. Another reminder that in this picture-perfect military family, I was always the missing caption. There was a time when I thought maybe I'd earn my seat, that maybe if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally be proud. But now I know better. This wasn't about pride. It was about control, about curating an image where only the acceptable parts of me got to exist. And for this family, the part of me that served in silent operations, the part that still carries nightmares, the part that never asked for recognition, that part made them uncomfortable, so they edited me out. That night, back in the hotel, I unpacked the dress uniform, laid it on the bed, and I told myself, they don't get to decide when I exist. They don't get to shrink me anymore. Because even in the best revenge stories, sometimes the real victory is showing up whole. There are things I've done I can't talk about, not because I don't want to, but because I'm not allowed to. There are countries I've been to that don't show up on maps. Operations I led that never made it to press briefings. People alive today who will never know that I had a hand in getting them out. But none of that means anything when your own family treats you like wallpaper. You know what hurts more than being insulted? Being left out on purpose. My name never made it onto the Christmas cards, not one photo on the walls. When guests asked what I did, my mum would deflect. Oh, she moves around a lot, kinda in between roles right now. In between? I was deep in strategic operations in northern Syria, but to them I was just in between. I started noticing the cropping first. Facebook posts from birthdays where I was present, except I wasn't. Group shots where I'd been standing right beside them, but somehow I was gone in the version they posted. I remember one time clearly, Dad held the camera, said, "Leona, scoot over a bit." Then later I saw the photo online and realised I had been cropped clean out. Clean. Like I was never there. When Madison's engagement went public, the whole family gathered to take formal portraits. Matching suits, dresses, champagne toasts. I was 2 weeks off a mission in the Balkans. Showed up anyway. I wasn't in a single posted photo. Not one. I didn't say anything. I just stared at my phone longer than I should have that night. Do you know what it feels like to be edited out of your own life? Because I do, and maybe some of you do too. If you've ever scrolled through family posts and realised you were the only one not tagged, not mentioned, not seen, I'm just going to say it. You're not alone. And no, it's not overreacting. It's erasure, plain and quiet. There were times I thought I was imagining it, that I was too sensitive, so I tested it. One Thanksgiving I showed up late on purpose. Nobody noticed. Nobody even looked up. My seat at the table? Given to a neighbour's son because he just got into law school. Apparently that outranked classified deployments in war zones. I ate standing up, by the sink, and I smiled like it didn't scrape the insides of my ribs raw. The silence, it starts small, but over time it eats at you. You find yourself asking, and maybe they really did forget. Maybe I really don't belong. Maybe I'm too much trouble to include. I stopped sending updates about my postings. I stopped mentioning locations. I'd just write "Love, Leona" on Christmas cards. Still sent them every year, knowing they'd never make the fridge door. But there was this one time, one quiet gut-punching moment I'll never forget. Dad had a minor stroke. I was stationed in Germany at the time. Madison called, crying, "Can you help? He needs clearance fast for a cardiac bypass. They said it could take weeks, unless we know someone." And we did know someone. Me. I pulled every favour I had. Got his VA approval pushed through in 4 days. No one ever said thank you. A week later, I saw a Facebook post from Mum, so proud of Madison for being there every step of the way. We're blessed to have her in the family. Her, not them, not us, her. Funny thing is, I didn't even want credit. Not really. I just wanted to be seen. Just once. But I guess in my family, usefulness didn't mean worth. You could be helpful, but still invisible. And yet, I kept showing up. I mailed birthday flowers. I RSVP'd for weddings. I sent referrals when someone's cousin needed a connection at the VA. Always signing off the same way, "Love, Leona." Never with rank, never with a title, never with a hint that maybe, just maybe, they needed me more than they wanted to admit. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering what would happen if I stopped trying, if I just disappeared. Would anyone call? Would anyone care? Or would they just update the family photo and never mention me again? So if you've ever asked yourself those same questions, if you've ever been part of a family that made you feel optional, I don't have a magic fix, but I do see you. And if you feel like yelling at the screen right now, if you've got a story like this, tell me. tell someone. Because when you live in silence long enough, sometimes the only way out is breaking it for someone else. There's a different kind of silence that hits when you walk into a room and realize they've already decided who you're going to be, not based on who you are, but based on how invisible they need you to be that day. That's exactly what it felt like, walking into Madison's promotion dinner, not a celebration. A stage. A perfectly curated scene where my family got to play America's most functional military household in front of friends, officers, and neighbours. And I was the unwelcome truth they didn't want walking in through the front door. I arrived 10 minutes early, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone would look up and smile. But no, Dad gave me the nod. That one all-purpose, hey you exist gesture. Mom was fussing over the table setup. She didn't even glance up. The only words I got? You can take the last table in the back. That one's unassigned. Unassigned. Again. Just like the name cards I never had. The seat at the Thanksgiving table I'd lost to the neighbour's son. The birthday group photo I wasn't in. I stood there for a second, unsure whether to laugh or walk out. But I didn't do either. I just nodded, like they had trained me to, and made my way to the table labelled Family Overflow. It was me, and a cousin no one really liked. I watched as they welcomed each guest personally. There were hugs, handshakes, proud introductions. Major so-and-so from Fort Benning, Captain this, Lieutenant that. But when Madison walked in, all polished perfection in her new uniform with her medals glinting under the lights, she didn't even look at me. She made her way to the front like she belonged there. And she did, at least in their eyes. During dinner, they passed around a slideshow on a giant screen. Photos of Madison in training, photos of her in uniform, at ceremonies, at fundraisers, even at brunch. And then one group shot. From the one family wedding I'd managed to attend in the past 5 years. I was there. I knew I was there. But not in the photo they chose. They'd cropped it. I was on the left. They chopped me off entirely and captioned it, all of us together. I stared at it too long for it to be normal. And that's when the MC called for family members to say a few words. Madison smiled, stepped up to the podium and did what she always does best, perform. She thanked the guests, thanked her mentors, thanked our parents. Then she paused, looked in my direction without meeting my eyes, and said, "And of course I have my sister here tonight. She used to be in the military too, but now she's with the VA office, admin, I think." The crowd chuckled lightly. Someone muttered, "Well, hey, it's something." And in that moment, I felt the air get thinner. I felt my heart beat in my throat. I hadn't expected fanfare. I hadn't even planned to speak. But I didn't expect to be reduced, not erased, just flattened, folded into a version of myself they could tolerate. Admin. Used to be in the military. That's what they decided was safe to say out loud. I didn't stand up, didn't interrupt, didn't wave a resume or scream, "I outrank half the Pentagon." I just sat there, still, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, because when you've been denied a voice for long enough, you learn that your silence can be louder than their applause. Later, during dessert, a colonel from another unit leaned over and asked, "So you work at the VA now? Which office?" I said softly, That's not quite accurate." He looked confused. I didn't clarify. I wasn't going to break years of confidentiality to defend my ego at a party they didn't want me to be visible at in the first place. But I did go to the coat room, unzipped my suitcase, and touched the uniform still folded there, still untouched, still mine. I don't know what kept me from putting it on. Maybe I didn't want them to win. Maybe I didn't want them to twist that moment too. Look at her showing off. Can't let her sister have the spotlight. But standing there in silence, I realised, no matter what I wore, I was never going to fit the frame they had built. And maybe I was never meant to. You ever been called something that sounded polite, but underneath it's scraped at your identity? Like when someone says, "She's doing fine," but what they mean is, "She didn't live up to what we expected." If you've had that moment, if you've ever swallowed your pride to stay respectful in a room full of people who erased your whole damn story, yeah, you felt what I felt that night. And maybe that's why I'm telling it now. The the clink of glasses, the hum of small talk, the polite clatter of dessert forks on porcelain. Madison had just wrapped up her speech, another perfectly packaged monologue about grit, teamwork, and staying true to the mission. There was a moment of applause. People rose from their chairs. Someone dropped a napkin. And just like that, the event was shifting into its closing rhythm. I sat still at my little overflow table, half listening to someone next to me talk about housing markets, trying not to feel like a prop in my sister's curated narrative. That's when the doors opened. Not in a dramatic way, not even loudly, just deliberately. 2 uniformed officers entered first. No one turned. They weren't the stars, but when he walked in, everything changed. A tall, steel-grey man, broad shoulders, crisp blues, rows of ribbons that didn't sparkle. They warned. I knew that walk, that stride that didn't ask for attention, but commanded it. General Marcus Chambers, 4-star, retired but not forgotten, former head of Joint Special Operations Command. A man who'd once looked me in the eye on the tarmac in Afghanistan and said, "You saved more lives with one phone call than I did in 2 decades." The entire room slowed. Some people stood, others stiffened in their seats. Even Madison, mid-laugh, faltered. General Chambers scanned the crowd. 1 second, 2, then his gaze locked on me, and he marched forward. Not toward the stage, not toward Madison, but straight to my table. Every head turned. Madison's mouth opened slightly. My mother dropped her dessert fork with a soft clatter. Dad shifted like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. General Chambers came to a full stop in front of me. He squared his shoulders, and in a voice that reached the back wall, he said, "Ma'am, General Hayes, it's an honor to see you again." And then he saluted, sharp, clean, no hesitation. The entire room stilled. A hush swept over the tables. Even the staff paused mid-pour. For one suspended breath, Madison didn't exist. The spotlight shifted. The room turned. And I finally existed. I stood, not quickly, not with flair, just enough to meet him, just enough to return the salute. Because I would never let a man who once trusted me with a battalion stand alone. When I dropped my arm, he reached into his coat pocket. "I debated whether or not to bring this," he said quietly, "but I figured you had a right to see it." He handed me a manila envelope, unmarked, slim. I opened it slowly. Inside, a printed scan of a classified incident report, one I'd filed. But the language had been twisted, misused, made to suggest I'd authorized a reckless mission, that civilians had died, that I'd gone rogue. But I recognized the writing immediately. Not mine, a doctored version. Carefully edited, but not carefully enough. General Chambers leaned in. "We intercepted it floating through internal affairs. Anonymous tip. But whoever sent it pulled language from your original debrief, nearly word for word." He paused. "Only 3 people ever read that debrief. One of them was me. One was the director. The third was someone close to you." My fingers tensed around the page. I didn't look up, because I already knew. From across the room, Madison stared like she'd seen a ghost. No. Like her ghost had just come back from the dead with receipts. I folded the envelope, slid it into my coat pocket, and sat back down, quietly. The general gave me one last nod and turned, but before he left he said, "We never forgot who you were, Hayes, even if your family did." And with that he walked away. No microphone, no announcement, just truth, undeniable, unpolished, and completely, unapologetically mine. The rest of the event blurred. I remember Madison not being able to finish her thank yous. Her voice shook. She fumbled her note cards. At one point she tried to joke, "Guess I wasn't the only general in the room." But the laugh never landed, because the room had already decided. They'd seen the real thing. Later that night, back at my hotel, I laid the envelope on the bed next to my untouched uniform. It felt heavier than paper, not because of what it exposed, but because of what it validated. 20 years of silence. erased photos, unassigned seats, half-hearted nods. And now, one salute had pulled all of it back into focus. They tried to erase me, and in one moment, the truth rewrote itself louder than they ever expected. She found me behind the reception hall, still in full uniform, still in full character. But for the first time, she didn't look composed. Madison's heels clicked across the tile like gunfire. Her mouth was tight, her eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. And the second she reached me, she didn't even fake a greeting. "You let me stand up there like a fool," she hissed. "Was that your plan? Just humiliate me?" I didn't answer right away. Because how do you respond to that? To the person who's been taking up space you were never even allowed to enter, now accusing you of stealing their light? I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket, held it up. Steady. "Did you send this?" I asked, calm, controlled. Madison froze. For a moment, just a flicker, I saw it. Not fear, not guilt, but recognition. Like the mask had slipped for half a second and the person underneath was someone who knew exactly what she'd done. She didn't deny it, didn't even flinch. "Yes," she said, just like that. A breath, a blink, because you weren't supposed to win. That silence hit harder than any insult. I watched her jaw tighten, like she was trying to hold something in, but it spilled out anyway. "You left, you disappeared, and they still talked about you." Her voice cracked. "You were the one they whispered about in the hallways. The ghost commander, the quiet legend. I stayed. I followed the rules. I made them proud. I was present. But you were the one everyone remembered. And me, I was just Madison. I didn't say anything, didn't need to, because the most brutal thing about betrayal is realizing it didn't come from hate. It came from envy, from that cold, calculated kind of resentment that builds up quietly. One cropped photo, one empty seat, one missed thank you at a time, and I'd missed all the signs, or maybe I hadn't wanted to see them. She looked away then, down at her shoes, her hands, anywhere but at me. "I didn't think it would get that far," she muttered. "I thought they'd investigate quietly, maybe slow you down, maybe remind you that you're not untouchable." I let the silence stretch long enough to sting, then said quietly, "Sometimes the blade in your back comes from the same hand that helped you learn to walk." She winced. It wasn't just the words, it was hearing them in my voice, level, measured, like a commander making an observation, not throwing a punch. For a second, she looked like she might say sorry. Her mouth opened, then closed, and instead of apologizing, she said something far more honest. "I just wanted to be enough." That hit differently, because how do you explain to someone that being enough isn't about being compared? It's about not having to erase someone else just to feel seen. I stepped back, put the envelope away, not as a threat, not as leverage, just done. "You didn't just try to erase my service," I said. "You tried to erase me." She didn't argue. She didn't chase after me. She just stood there, suddenly small inside her perfectly pressed uniform. And I walked away, not in triumph, but with the quiet ache of someone who had finally accepted that family can break you in ways no battlefield ever could. I thought about all the moments that came before this one, the voicemail instead of a homecoming, the unassigned seat at Thanksgiving, the birthday flowers that never got a reply, and now this. The betrayal didn't shock me. What shocked me was how unshocked I felt, like I'd known, deep down. I just hadn't been ready to admit it. Back in my hotel room, I looked at the mirror. Still in my plain clothes, still off-duty, even now, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Not because I'd been saluted, not because I had proof, but because I finally stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. I finally knew who I was, with or without their applause. Some people think betrayal is loud. It's not. It's quiet. It's cumulative. It's a million little choices to look away, to diminish, to clip wings in the name of not stealing the spotlight. If you've ever felt that from someone you loved, from a sister, a parent, a friend, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say, it wasn't anger that broke me, It was the fact that she never thought I'd notice. A week after Madison's dinner-turned showdown, the invitations arrived. Not for another forced family gathering, not for a medal ceremony, but for something I never thought I'd see on my front step. A single, heavy envelope, addressed to Brigadier General Leona Hayes, inviting me to head the very strategic review committee that Madison herself had drafted. I opened it slowly, fingers trembling, not from fear, but from a question I hadn't dared ask out loud in 20 years. Do they finally see me? When I arrived at the family home the next weekend, nothing looked different. Same ivy-covered porch, same wreath on the door, same sliding into the role of the quiet sister when I walked in, except this time I carried the envelope in my hand. Madison watched me from the living room, her posture half relaxed, half expecting. Mum hovered in the kitchen, eyeing me over the counter as if she was studying a puzzle piece she didn't recognize. And Dad lifted an old family portrait from the mantel, the one taken at Grandma's 80th birthday, the photo where I'd been cropped out. He ran his fingers along the empty space beside Madison where my face should have been. Then he looked up at me, half smile, half sigh. "This one's missing someone," he said. "We'll take a new one this weekend." No speech, no grand apology, just the simple fact that I was finally part of the picture again. We sat down to discuss the proposal. Madison cleared her throat, sliding her folder across the table. "I've outlined a reform plan based on your strategies from Nahran," she said. "I don't need your signature, I just want your input." She watched me, waiting. I flipped through the pages, tactics I'd once deployed in hostile zones, now mapped out in neat bullet points. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same strategies she'd once used to bury me, she now wanted me to refine. I looked up and said one word: advance. That afternoon, I walked through the yard where I'd raced with cousins as a kid, climbed oak trees and learned to drive a stick shift. Memories I'd almost forgotten in the haze of deployments and deployments' aftermath. My mother joined me on the porch swing. She folded her hands in her lap, looking at me the way she hadn't in years, not with averted eyes, but with an unfiltered curiosity. "Are you eating enough?" she asked. Her tone wasn't micromanaging, it was caring. I nodded. "Yes, Mom." "Good," she whispered, and for the first time, I believed her. That night, as I packed my uniform for my trip back to Fort Campbell, I felt something shift inside me. No longer the weighty question of why them, not me, but a peaceful certainty of here I am, and that's enough. Back at Fort Campbell, I stood in the lecture hall, the one I'd once dreamed of teaching in, before my own family's silence had almost crushed that dream. Rows of chairs faced me. The podium gleamed under fluorescent lights. My uniform hung on a rack behind me, ready if I chose to wear it. I watched as people trickled in, officers, cadets, analysts, and then she walked through the door first, Madison. She took a seat front and centre, pen poised above a notebook. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time they weren't flicking away in discomfort or envy. They were earnest. "I'm taking notes," she whispered. I smiled. The class began. I spoke about ethics in asymmetric warfare. I spoke about the cost of invisibility in high-stakes operations. I spoke about the importance of every soldier knowing they're valued, not just for what they do, but for who they are. My voice rang clear, no hesitation. Every word hammered home something I'd always known. Existence is its own form of resistance. Being seen is the first victory. Afterwards, cadets filed out, pausing to thank me. One asked for a photo, my first public family photo in a sense. Another asked for career advice, and at the back, Madison scribbled furiously. That evening I scrolled through my phone, messages from colleagues, notes of appreciation, LinkedIn requests. And there it was, at the top, a text from my mother. "I saw your lecture online. I'm proud." No emojis, no exclamation points. But those words, simple, unadorned, felt like a medal around my neck. I called her right away. "Mom," I said, "thank you." "Love you," she replied. That was enough. Weeks later, we did take that new family photo. This time, I was there, centre left, alongside Madison, parents flanking us on either side. The photographer had us lean in close. No cropping needed. A friend joked, "Finally got the whole crew, huh?" I laughed and tapped Madison on the shoulder. We did. That photo sits on my desk now, next to the invitation letter, next to the class outline, next to a small vase of wildflowers from my grandmother's garden. It's a reminder that you don't need a grand apology to reclaim your space. You just need to show up as who you are. If you've ever been the one they left unassigned at the table, if you've ever had to fight for a seat in your own story, drop a brief note in the comments. It can be one word, a sentence, or even an emoji. Let's fill those empty seats together. Share your experience of being unseen and how you decided to exist anyway. Because every voice reclaimed is a victory worth celebrating.